People who've been through the most often look the most okay. Not because they're pretending, but because they've been holding it together for so long that even the way they fall apart has changed. They laugh, they work, they show up to conversations and seem completely fine. But underneath all of that, there's a whole world of time that nobody else has seen. And here's the strange part, sometimes they don't even fully know it themselves. They just notice one day that things don't knock them down the way they used to. That they see people differently now. That being alone doesn't feel like a punishment anymore. That they guard something quiet inside themselves. And they'd really like to keep it. Today, we're talking about 5 signs that someone has carried more than most people realize, even when you'd never be able to tell just by looking at them. And if a few of these feel unusually familiar, you might have come a lot further than you think. Sign 1: things that would have broken you before just don't hit the same way anymore. There was a time when a single text could ruin your whole day. One cold comment from someone you cared about, and you'd be replaying it for days. A change in plans, a friend going quiet, an expectation that didn't pan out. Any one of those could spiral into something that felt like everything. But now, something similar happens, and you just pause. You breathe, you think for a second, and then you let it pass. Some people look at that and think, oh, they've gone numb. But here's the thing, it's usually the opposite. The people who feel the most deeply are actually the ones most likely to end up here. Because when you've already survived the bigger waves, you stop throwing all your energy at every little ripple. Think about it this way. When everything feels dangerous, you react to everything. Every spark, every flicker, every sudden sound. But once you've actually been burned a few times, you start to learn something. Some fires need your full attention. Others, you can just walk right past them. So if you find yourself less rattled than you used to be, that's not coldness. That's closer to strength. Sign 2: being alone doesn't feel like something you have to escape anymore. Maybe there was a time when silence felt like a threat. When being disconnected from other people left this uncomfortable hum underneath everything. You needed something going on, someone to talk to, some kind of input. But somewhere along the way, that shifted. Now, you can be in a room full of people and find yourself quietly counting the minutes until you get to go home. Not because you hate being around people, but because the moment you walk back into your own space, you can feel your shoulders drop. The tension you didn't even know you were carrying just lets go. Alone time stopped being empty time. It became the time when things settle, when you can breathe, when you come back to yourself. And this isn't really about being introverted or extroverted. It's what happens to people who've poured a lot into relationships, who've been disappointed more than a few times, who've expected things from people and had those expectations fall apart. Eventually you learn something that no one can just tell you. You have to earn your own peace. You can't outsource it to someone else's good mood or someone else's attention. So the people who've genuinely gotten comfortable being alone, they're not the ones who've never felt lonely. It's actually the opposite. They've spent enough nights alone that those nights stopped being the enemy. They learned how to hold their own company. And now, quiet is a place they actually want to be. Sign 3: you pick up on people faster than you used to. It's hard to explain exactly, but something signals early. A person can seem perfectly fine on the surface, but something feels a little off. Someone's friendly, but it doesn't quite feel real. Someone says all the right things, but their actions never seem to follow. Someone only shows up when they need something. Years ago, you might have ignored those signals. You gave people the benefit of the doubt. You told yourself, I'll see how this plays out. But now those things register differently. The look in someone's eyes, the rhythm of how they respond, the patterns in how they treat you versus how they treat others. The gap between what they say and what they actually do. It's sharper now, more immediate. Now stay with me, because this isn't the same as being suspicious of everyone. It's not a wall, it's a sense. And most of the time, it came from something real. From trusting someone who didn't earn it. From opening up and getting hurt. From misreading a situation and paying for it. When those things happen, your eyes start learning what your heart used to handle alone. You stop reading people by what they present. You start reading them by what they consistently do. That's not a trauma response. That's one of the most expensive lessons life teaches. And here's the part that matters most: this doesn't make you push everyone away. If anything, it helps you find the right ones faster. The people who've been through a lot don't trust blindly. But they're not closed off either. The difference is bigger than it sounds. Sign 4: you seem fine on the outside, but you don't show people the inside very easily. You can laugh, you can joke, you can move through a room and seem completely at ease. People around you mostly assume you're doing great. But the real stuff, the heavy stuff, That stays close to the chest. Big decisions get processed alone. The moments where things feel like they're falling apart don't show up on your face the way they might for someone else. So people sometimes say things like, "I can never really tell what you're thinking." Or, "You don't really let people in, do you?" And it's not that there's nothing there. There's plenty there, but at some point, there were moments when you let something out. And it wasn't handled well. Maybe you told someone you were struggling and they brushed it off. Maybe you opened up carefully and the response was, "Why are you making such a big deal out of this?" Maybe you showed a vulnerable side and it was used against you somehow. When that happens enough times, you learn. Not consciously, not as a decision you sit down and make. You just start to understand that not everyone deserves to see every part of you. And so now you move slowly. You watch, you wait, you choose carefully. That's not a wall, that's a filter. And honestly, the trust you do give out now, it means something different. It's not the kind you hand out to anyone who happens to be nearby. It's the kind that's been tested over time. That's why the few people who are actually close to you, the ones who've made it past that filter, they're worth something real. Sign 5. The quiet, ordinary moments feel almost unexpectedly precious. You might notice you're not chasing stimulation the way you once did. The pressure to always be doing something, always be somewhere exciting, always have something to show for your time, it's lighter now. What actually feels valuable is something different. A calm morning with nowhere to be. An afternoon that just passes without anything going wrong. A short conversation with someone you're comfortable with. The feeling that today, at least, nothing is falling apart. Those moments hit differently now. They feel like something worth protecting. And here's why. When you've lived through a long stretch of anxiety, when you've spent years in a state of low-level tension, always braced for the next thing, always managing something, always tired in a way that's hard to name, you develop a very specific understanding. Ordinary peace is not ordinary at all. People who've been in the middle of a long storm know exactly what it means when the weather finally clears. People who've spent years running on empty know what it feels like to just stop and not have to keep going. So the shift is real. Dramatic happiness stops being the goal. Quiet stability starts to feel like the whole point. That's not settling, that's wisdom, and it leads somewhere specific. You start making different choices almost automatically. You move away from friction that doesn't need to happen. You pull back from relationships that cost more than they give. You stop going places you never actually wanted to go. You let yourself say no. You let yourself stay home. You let yourself not explain. And you do it without the guilt you might have felt before. That ability, the quiet ability to protect your own life, without needing anyone's permission, that's one of the things you can only get by actually living through something. It's not avoidance, it's self-preservation, and it looks like confidence from the outside, even when it was built from exhaustion. So let's bring it all together. Not being shaken as easily as you used to be. Finding real comfort in being alone. Reading people more quickly and accurately. Keeping your inner world close until trust is actually earned. And finding genuine value in the quiet, uneventful moments. These 5 things don't come from reading the right book. They don't come from a conversation or a course, or a piece of advice someone gave you. They come from actually living it. From running into walls. From being disappointed. From holding on when you wanted to let go. From getting back up in rooms where nobody saw you fall. So if several of these felt like your story, I want to be clear about what that means. It does not mean you're broken. It might mean exactly the opposite. It might mean you've already been through more than most people around you would ever guess. And here's the last thing. The people who've become genuinely strong, truly, quietly strong, often have no idea. They don't feel powerful. They just notice one day that something that would have leveled them before didn't. And that moment, that small, almost unremarkable moment, is the proof. You've already come further than you know. If this one stayed with you, share it with someone who's been carrying more than they let on. They might need to hear this today more than you realize. And drop a comment below which one of these 5 hit closest to home. I read every single one.